I have little bios for you all, but I think it would be better for my students to get to know you if you just want to tell them a little bit about your background and what you do.
Kenny?
Me? All right,
You start, Kenny.
I'm probably the shortest. So I started out as a ghost hunter many years ago, and then the more I got into photography, the more I began to understand how a lot of these anomalies were being captured, and that developed more of an interest in the skeptical movement, skeptical literature, where I actually found Ben's work and Skeptical Inquirer, and I started learning more about that. I started a blog. I wrote a self-published book, which was really short run, about photographic anomalies, and then the blog turned into a video channel promoting science and critical thinking and showing people how to take apart like all these ghost hunting gadgets, what they really do, and also tackling just mysteries, just getting in there and showing people like these are the steps that I took to figure it out, and this is what I figured out. And that led to a column for Skeptical Inquirer online, where I never ever hit the limit. I always go way beyond the limit, word limit, much to Ben's satisfaction. And then, yeah, I keep working with them. I do science conferences, skeptical conferences, events. I do paranormal conferences where I talk. I'm usually the token skeptic and try to bring a little reason and critical thinking to everyone. So that's me. And I also do live Q&A every Friday night, where I invite paranormal people to come on and ask questions and discuss topics about paranormal stuff like ghosts and UFOs and Bigfoot and stuff like that.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's
can
me.
You give, if my students want to see that, do you have like a link if you guys have things that you want them
Yes.
to, yeah.
Absolutely.
So I'll send it in the description of this video. I'll put a link with all of that information in there. So yeah, that's
Cool.
great. Okay, who wants to go next?
I'll jump in. So my name is Benjamin Radford. I am a research fellow at the Center for Inquiry, also a version of which is the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry, formerly known as SciCop, the Committee for the Scientific Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal. You can see why they changed the name.
Yeah.
I'm the deputy editor for Skeptical Inquirer Science Magazine and have been for 20 some years now. I've also written 13 books on various things, media literacy, ghosts, mysteries, things like that. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology and a master's degree in education. And I do a podcast called Squaring the Strange and write for SI. And that's kind of what I do.
That's phenomenal. That's so great. Okay, and last but not least.
My name is Jim Underdown. I'm the executive director for the Center for Inquiry West in Los Angeles. That is the home of the Center for Inquiry Investigations Group, formerly the Independent Investigations Group. We offer a $250,000 prize for anyone who can prove paranormal ability under scientific test conditions. And we have been testing people for the last 20 years and doing investigations about just about anything that you might have read about in Skeptical Inquirer or Kenny's looked into or anything else. And I think we have the largest active prize in the world right now.
So you guys were working with the James Randi Foundation on that, is that right?
We have in the past worked with the Randi Foundation. They currently only accept a narrow field of applications.
Okay.
And we pretty much talk to anybody. So yeah, like that.
And so far, no one's claimed that prize yet?
No, that money is safe. No one's going to win it, I predict. But what are predictions?
Right.
They're worthless.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you, gentlemen, so much for being here. I'm really grateful to have this opportunity to speak with you all. And I teach parapsychology at Brooklyn College. I got my master's in experimental psychology. I'm a failed musician who went back to college to do something to get a real job, and I'm an adjunct, so I don't know if I really did better or worse, but I love teaching and I love exploring these topics. Having been someone who believed in all of the things and then now try to be an open-minded skeptic, but believe in fewer of the things, I like to tell my students what my predecessor, Frank Grasso, did, and tell them that they should be skeptics but not scoffers, because I think that's the most useful, mindset to have. And with that in mind, I have a lot of questions that probably all of you will be able to lend some of your experience to. I remember watching X-Files many years ago, and I always wished that I could do that. So I'm very envious of all of your jobs. I think it's phenomenal what you're doing. And I got into some of this stuff because I went to CFI meetings here in New York, actually. So I was already familiar with the organization. And so the most recent class I just uploaded, unfortunately, it's an asynchronous class, so I have to upload my videos. So I miss a lot of this discussion. So this is really nice. Was on precognition. And of course, I mentioned the Rhines and the Gansfeld experiments. And we got into a little bit of the theoretical tachyon particle theory. So my question is, do you think that physics will ever find a way to more definitively prove any of these psi abilities? Or do you think that people who are trying to meld physics and with this sort of stuff are kind of barking up the wrong tree? What do you think? And that's it. Whoever wants to take that on.
Jim, why don't you start?
Yeah, I mean, for starters, people who are believers in that sort of thing love to try to tap into the credibility of science.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you get people like Deepak Chopra who talks about all kinds of wacky ideas about how we know things.
He uses sciencey words in very poor context, I find.
Quantum!
Yeah.
We talk about that in my class as well. Like we talk about, because I have to mention the, I think some very well-intentioned people, as well as people who don't have any idea what they're doing, are trying to figure out if this thing is real, what is the mechanism by which that could be explained and taken out of the paranormal and put into the normal. So I appreciate that. But yes, quantum is, we'll get there.
Well, I mean, the first thing before you start talking about how quantum physics explains anything, and we learned this from one of our founders, Ray Hyman, you got to see a legitimate effect first. And before we start worrying about how we're going to explain the legitimate effect, find it in the first place. And we simply have not ever found it. So a lot of these experiments have been roundly criticized for bad methodology or tiny effects that could be explained just by a random number. So let's see something happen that's for real first, and then we'll worry about whether physics covers it or not.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with Jim on that. I mean, I'm always sort of baffled when I see people try and bolster the credibility of things such as psi or psychic abilities or ghosts, whatever else, by saying, well, the problem is that it's there, but that science just isn't registering it, or science isn't advanced enough to get it. My question is, why not? Right? If in the case of ghosts, for example, there's no reason in the world, if ghosts exist, that they can't be measured. Ghosts are seen; they appear in the spectrum. They're allegedly photographed. If they can be photographed, then I mean, there's physics behind it. Right, exactly. Yeah. So when I have ghost hunters come up to me and Kenny's seen this and Jim has as well. Well, they say, oh well, the ghosts are real. The problem is that science hasn't caught up with how to measure them. Like, what are you talking about? What are these measurements that you're talking about? Because nobody can put them together. And so it's the same thing when you're talking about psi and questions about precognition and stuff. As Jim mentioned, the problem is not that people are demonstrating precognition and telekinesis, moving things with their mind, but scientists don't know how they do it. That's not the problem. The problem is that they're not demonstrating this. There's nothing to bridge the two.
Under controlled condition. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I feel you on that. Kenny, you've done some of these investigations firsthand, right? Yeah.
Who?
What's your?
Me?
Oh, yeah, you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, who me? Who me?
Also,
You talking to me?
Don't start, Ben.
so you've all done the ghost hunting thing? I was thinking of Kenny as more of the person that did more of that, but I might be wrong.
I think I'm more involved with the actual community of ghost hunters and stuff than the other guys. And I found that when anytime a headline comes out with some kind of new scientific discovery,
Mm-hmm.
and I stress the word headline.
Yeah.
Ghost hunters are, and I see Ben already smiling. Ghost hunters and a lot of paranormal believers are quick to jump on it. They're like, oh, see, look. I can't tell you how many times I hear quantum entanglement used to explain ghosts.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah. So it's used,
I have to,
but then usually my first question is, can you explain what quantum entanglement is? Because I have an idea. I have a very, very vague idea of it because I'm not a physicist, so I'm not qualified to actually talk about it, but I have a general idea of what it's supposed to be, yet the paranormal believers or ghost hunters or what have you jump on it, and that's their solid evidence that, yes, all this stuff happens.
Right.
Even with, and most of the time they don't read the paper. Like, they don't read the rest of the article, much less the actual study. And that's a big problem because, I mean, I think all of us know how boring studies are to read.
Well,
you know?
I think one of the ways that I kind of tackled that in the tiny bit of time I give it, besides showing them videos or telling them who else might be better at this, but I just mentioned that the things on the quantum level seem to work very differently from on the larger level, and how this would translate to people having telepathic powers or something. I understand the idea, but it doesn't necessarily like, if this could be seen at that tiny level, but we'd be seeing it at the macro level too. It doesn't make sense to me that it should be visible.
Yeah, it should be there.
Eye, so
yeah.
But I appreciate people trying to find a physical explanation for something they think is happening. So I put it out there and I say, this is what some people have suggested, and it looks like quantum theory is a really fascinating field full of interesting questions, but I don't claim to have any.
It's a buzzword.
Answers.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's a buzzword. I don't use quantum. The only time I use quantum is to point out when other people were using quantum as a buzzword. I mean, that's really when it comes up, because I don't know about it. I'm not a physicist, and all the people that I talk to are not physicists.
Even a lot of physicists aren't in that field. Physics covers a variety of
And to piggyback on something that Ben said, I mean, when we hear this excuse that science just hasn't caught up to it, it doesn't have the technology yet to figure it out. Well, that's a contradiction of what all of these ghost hunters are doing, because they constantly claim that they can measure it. Yeah. And they can capture it. They have all these devices which don't do anything except beep and light up and beep. That's all they do. But they use them because they think that they're detecting ghosts. They think they're measuring. They think they're capturing on film and audio. But so to have that there, that one side, and then to turn around to somebody else and say science just hasn't caught up to it yet. Yeah. They contradict themselves repeatedly.
That's a good point.
Repeatedly.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Well, and they are, bear in mind that all these instruments are measuring something.
Right.
I mean, they're seeing something.
Electricity and air and pressure.
Yeah. The question is it a ghost, or are they just measuring what they were built to measure?
Yeah, I've often wondered how they chose the specific instruments that they did for those types of things.
Number of lights and how many buzzers.
Does it make an impressive beep on camera? Yes or no? If it's yes, then they'll use it.
And can they afford it?
Right.
Oh, yeah.
They won't pull their money and go to Radio Shack with the gift card.
Oh, yeah. Well,
you're dating yourself, Ben.
I've been to Radio Shack. I mean, yeah. One of the things I noted, because I was writing just a tiny bit about this stuff for a book that is eventually someday I'll finish, and I wanted to give some people the benefit of the doubt, especially going back to the time of, say, Pierre Curie, who was very interested in these sorts of things, because they were discovering new types of energy. So I feel like it made more sense back then when things were just getting started in some of the, in more things were getting started in the sciences. And it was a very exciting time probably to be working, and you're discovering new materials that are hard to see, but can leave, you know, physical effects on the world. And so that made sense to me as, okay, it didn't take as much perhaps cognitive dissonance or compartmentalization to go from there to, well, maybe this is just another thing we haven't figured out how to measure yet. But I think by now, there should be some harder evidence, because we do have really good instrumentation now for measuring stuff, as far as I understand it.
Yeah, there's another aspect here, which is what in skepticism we call the vanishing evidence horizon, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is where, because for example, if you look at the magazine Fate, which has been published since I think the 50s or something, and at one point I did at the Center for Inquiry in Buffalo, where I used to work. Down in the library, they had old Fate magazines, and at one point I was just sort of picking through them, and I picked up one from like 1956 or something, and it said, the headline was, any day now, the scientists are going to prove that psychic power exists. And I flip a page, it says, that within the next 20 years, psychic power will be routine, it'll be used all over the place for this and that. I'm thinking, wow, that was 1956. How's that coming, guys? Because it's fascinating, because you hear the verbatim, verbatim arguments today that, oh, well, the Roswell UFO crash, the governments are going to admit there's this global cover-up, in the next 10, 20 years. And, you hear this in the Ryan's experiments. Oh, well, the scientists don't want to admit that psychic power exists, but, there's so much evidence that within the next 10, 20 years, it's going to be overwhelming and people can't deny it. And the answer is, where the hell is it? It's always the good evidence. Always, it's just past the right. So just keep going, keep going. At some point, you're like, come on, guys, it's been decades.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the Rhine, so I want to talk about them a little bit, because are there people that you think were doing a really good job trying to investigate this stuff? Because I feel like the Rhine Institute were very, they had really well-designed experiments. They tried to have a lot of controls, and they did like some tens of thousands. I know the Paralysis Institute did thousands of experiments. I mean, for that matter, the CIA dropped a lot of money on this stuff. Who do you think of all of the labs or all of the researchers you've known have done the best job of trying to look at this in the most like methodologically, scientifically correct way? Is there anybody that you give credit to for honest attempts?
Jim, do you want to take that one, or do you want me to do it?
I mean, there were, it depends on what you're talking about. Different groups did different things.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, what's his name? I want to say Gary Schwartz.
Schwartz, yeah.
At University of Arizona. When we started reading some of the stuff that he was doing and how the experiments were set up, we were like, oh my God, this is horrible. You got somebody sitting behind a curtain. You can kind of see through the curtain and you can hear.
Oh no, sensory leakage. That's a big no-no.
Yeah, I mean,
no. But understand what Jim's saying here, because I know exactly what he's talking about. So Gary Schwartz, again, a distinguished professor at the University of Arizona, right, was on TV. He wrote books about this. I think one was called The Afterlife Experiments. Yeah. He was being touted as rock solid. This is hard science. This guy couldn't be fooled. He's doing these amazing experiments. And Jim goes there and says, what the hell is this? This is not, these aren't good. These aren't random blinded protocols.
Right.
Yeah, it was crap. And so, especially in the early days when people like Uri Geller were getting positive results, a lot of these scientists were psychologists, and there are other people who are, and even like hard scientists,
yeah,
who are expecting that they can show up, observe something, and that's what's going on.
But that's
we're not used to a con man like Uri Geller showing up and pulling all kinds of tricks.
I show a video of him being debunked by James Randi as part of my class, so we talk about him. It's the people that need to debunk him are people like Penn and Teller, who debunk other magicians, and I'm a big Houdini fan, because Houdini, and I saw the quote of Houdini, I think, on Kenny's site there.
Yeah.
I was very
I love
excited.
Houdini.
I have a quote of Houdini as a tattoo. I'm like a big fan. Well, he knew what to look for because he's in that business. And I think sometimes people just assume a scientist in this field will have the same amount of critical thinking in a different field, and it doesn't necessarily translate. They don't assume they're going to be just fooled or that they don't know what they're looking for.
And the other thing to point out, and Jim mentioned this earlier, is that in a lot of these cases, the effect, it's real, but the question is it statistically significant? A lot of these are marginal stuff. So if you look at research by Ray Hyman,
Mm-hmm.
Ray's the perfect guy for this. He's done extensive research on this. Sue Blackmore has done some stuff on as well. And right, and again, the point is that in many of these cases, it's not that the experimenter is trying to deceive people.
Right.
It's not that they're trying to do some underhanded things. It's just they're not bringing the sufficiently stringent protocols to it. And a lot of times they're doing what's called data mining, where they'll do a whole bunch of experiments, and then they'll sort of, they'll file drawer effect some of these, and they say, well, look at all these, well, we got an effect here. And when you do a meta-analysis, you realize, well, hold on here. These weren't statistically significant. The p-value, I mean, so again, this goes back to what Jim was saying, is that it's not, it's, the effect. And what's interesting is that a lot of times when you talk to a lot of these psi researchers, they will flat out admit that the effect is small. They'll say, yeah, okay, the effect is small, but I'm like, no, hold on, back up. The effect is small. What does that mean in science? That means that there's a good chance, depending on how well controlled the study is, that it's due to chance. If you do enough studies, if you run enough things, eventually some of them are going to show up to be significant when they're actually not.
Yeah. So there's nobody that you think is like done the best, most earnest job, or do you think maybe some of those people are like Susan Blackmore or some of those folks? Like,
well, I mean, it's sort of like Jim said. I mean, it's sort of, depends what you mean by the best. I mean, it's like, I think a lot of them, I think, were well intentioned. I don't think.
Yeah, because I like to give that, because I'm like, I see these people working decades in some of this, and I think even if they didn't necessarily, find anything, I think they tried really. Like if somebody was shown, like in the Ryan Institute, when that guy was shown to be, was it Linsmeyer or whoever, making fraudulent data, they immediately retracted it. They fired him. I feel like.
And yet you have people like Gary Schwartz who are doing just as shoddy research, and he's on TV promoting this stuff. And this isn't 50 years ago. This is 10 years ago.
Right. Yeah.
I think it's really hard to actually nail down an answer for you for this question, because it's when you're talking about this kind of stuff, first of all, it's a huge blanket. It's a wide range. So you're going to have different factions looking at different parts. And even those, as we pointed out, like you can have scientists thinking they're doing a great job, and being touted as like the head honcho, this is the go-to guy. And then it takes somebody from a different perspective to walk in and be like, dude, you're totally missing the easiest stuff that can get by you.
Yeah.
And if you're not reaching out to those, I'm sure the other guys have dealt with it. I've dealt with it where people have just yelled at me as an insult, which wasn't an insult, but that I think like a magician. And therefore I can't go out and debunk this stuff, that I can't explain it scientifically. But I mean, I take that as a compliment.
These are the ones that tend to do them.
Right.
I mean, yeah.
And if you're going to have someone that's trying to deceive you, you want a magician.
Yeah.
You absolutely want to. But if you have someone that's not trying to deceive you, you still want a magician, but you want to look at something else.
The sleight of hand. Yeah, exactly. Okay.
And this is where, Jim, why don't you talk about some of the tests that you did? Because this is exactly what we're talking about in terms of a claimant coming to a thing and trying to put together a protocol. And a lot of people don't realize that designing a well-controlled experiment is really hard. Yeah. It's not easy. People are just like, oh, science. The average person has no idea how the hell it experience. So Jim, why don't you tell a little bit about some of the stuff you've done?
Yeah, I mean, because some people just, and they do have these experiences. I mean, we've all stood in front of a bank of elevators and said, that one's going to open up next, and it opens up, and you're like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
Some people take that quite seriously, and they think they have an ability based on that one moment. And so we have to come up with ways to make sure it's not just lucky, that it's not them misremembering, that it's all these other factors. And
Oh,
of
yeah.
course, you know, we spend lots of time thinking like a magician and making sure they're not going to burn us with some gimmick that we've never heard of before.
Right.
But you know, 100% of the people we've tested in the last 20 years have not tried to deceive us. They all really believe that they can do what they think they can do. And they're oftentimes quite shocked when they come and take a legitimate test and crash and burn.
Mm. Oh, yeah, that's that. Do you ever feel bad for them? Do people ever get really upset?
No, not at all.
No, okay.
No, actually, I do. Some people are quite confused and disappointed. We're actually very nice to them. We're compassionate. We say, you know, it didn't work out this time, and what do you think happened? And you know, we're pretty nice to them all in all, especially because so many of them are talking such shit before they show up. You know, they're so cocky and full of bravado. They're going to win the Nobel Prize. They're going to win our $250,000. They're going to show the world no one has believed me before. And then they show up and they can't do it, and it's a shock to their world.
Mm. Okay. So, has there been any claim that any of you have wished you couldn't debunk? Has there ever been something that you were like, "Oh, I really wish this was true"? All of them?
It would be great if some of these claims were true. I mean,
You also deal with cryptids, right?
oh, a little bit, yeah.
I don't
I
get to
dabble.
my class, but it's so much fun. I love talking about that sort of thing.
I mean, I would love if Bigfoot was real, because it'd be cool. It would be cool if there were aliens that visited us, because then, you know, Star Wars would be real, and I could actually go out and possibly get a lightsaber. I mean, that blows my mind.
Oh, science is making lightsabers, but they're
Yes.
very dangerous. I saw one that was plugged in, but it actually had the
I've seen that, the plasma blade. Yeah.
Very, very careful. That's I think
but-
those will happen.
Anything else? I mean, to be able to predict the future, to be able to talk to your friends around the planet without actually using any kind of technology, just thinking it.
Now, right? We don't need
cell phones. We can look it up. You know, let's hook into the internet with just our brains. A lot of these claims would be amazing if we can move stuff with our mind. I mean, that's the Force. I am a Star Wars fan, if you can't tell.
I can tell. Yeah.
I would love to have that. So yeah, many of these claims I would love.
Fun. Telepathy would be really fun. But whenever I've seen demonstrations, it's things they don't weigh more than a piece of paper anyway. So I'm like, well, that would be useless if that was even real, because if you want telepathy, you want to do, like, if you saw Stranger Things, like 11, and move a car. That's
telekinesis.
Telekinesis. Yeah.
I mean, I would say in terms of, you know, the something I really wish was real, and this is something that all three of us have done firsthand investigations in, would be psychic detectives, right? Because psychic detectives are a perfect real world case where you have people, actual humans, mothers, sisters, daughters, sons, whatever else, that are missing. They're gone. Maybe they've wandered off. Maybe they have Alzheimer's. Maybe they've been abducted. Who knows? Maybe they've gone hiking. As we're speaking right now, there's a woman that's missing in a park. That I saw on the news tonight. And I'm thinking to myself, if psychics are real, if psychic detectives can do what they say, that's great. Go find these people. Go find these abducted people. Go find these missing people. Go save some lives. So I really, truly, genuinely, sincerely wish these things were real, but they're not. And it's frustrating as researchers and as skeptics, investigators, to continually see these crop of people who claim to be psychics and they claim to have all these powers and they claim to do this, that, and the other. And then you say, okay, well, there's missing people all around you. Yes. There's hikers that are lost. There are people that are abducted. Where the hell are they? If you can do this, then go do it. Go save these people, and they can't.
Yeah, that's heartbreaking, that sort of thing. I don't like when I feel people are exploited and their time is wasted in the police force. So many police forces have used psychics. I was really astounded. It's something like 50% in some major cities have actually allowed for and given some of their time to
Who wants to take that one?
I don't know. I don't know about that.
Depends on what you-
from a study many years ago, but they were like, not of all of the ones in the whole country. I'm just saying of people that they talked to, a good percentage of them had at least engaged with psychics at some point on some of their cases, and that just really made me sad.
That's a better way to say it. They've engaged with them.
Yeah.
Because the vast majority of police forces in the world will not seek out the help of a psychic.
Oh no, I don't think that's normally the way it happens. But they give them time is always surprising to me. But
They have
Well,
to.
they're
They
not
have to.
supposed. They're not supposed.
suppose
Yeah, they have to.
it'd be
They're
an
not supposed to
assessment,
just
right?
say.
yeah,
You can't tell someone they're a crackpot without letting them tell their story.
and I suppose some of them they probably assume might have something to do with the case if they claim to know things, so they have to,
It's happened. Yeah, it's happened where psychics have actually had something to do with the case, and it kind of got turned back on them.
That's ugly. Okay.
How do you know? Well, I got it in a vision. Did you now?
Yeah.
Okay.
That seems like really dumb. That's just dumb. Why would you do that?
Well, not too many of them are smart. So
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to attack people.
oh no,
I don't know.
Way to go, Kenny.
whatever. Shut up,
It's dumb
Ben.
it's dumb if you are the perpetrator of a terrible crime to then call the police and admit to it in that way. That's pretty bad. Okay, so do you think there should be funded paranormal labs at all? Do you think this research should be funded? What do you think?
I don't think so. I think there's 100 years of trying. The evidence is in. Unless human beings evolve really super rapidly in the next couple of centuries, which doesn't really happen, don't waste your time at it. Not until somebody ponies up. Listen, we've had this test for 20 years. Randy's had it for 30 years or more.
Yeah.
No one's ever been able to do this. I wouldn't spend time one on this stuff.
Okay. That's fair. Does anybody have a dissenting opinion, or do you all?
Well, I would agree with Jim. I mean, if private people want to spend their own money, knock yourself out, right? There's lots of billionaires. There's lots of millionaires. If Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos, if they believe in psychic abilities and they want to dump $4 million into it, knock yourself out. But if you're talking about public money, right? Public money is public money.
Yeah.
I want my taxpayer money going to evidence-based methodologies. I don't want somebody dream something up. It's like, no, we have limited resources. We're currently in a pandemic.
Yeah.
I want public money going to avenues of research that have been proven to be fruitful, not something that, well, we've been looking at this for, we've been looking for Bigfoot for 60 years. We've been looking at ghosts since the 1800s. And the answer is, okay, well, and what do we have, right? Yes, you have people who've been doing research into psychic abilities for decades. You have people who've been looking for ghosts since the 1880s in England and SPR. That's all well and good. What do you got? Where's the result of that money? And the answer is nowhere.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much on board with both of them. I mean, I agree. If private funding, you want to raise your own money to do it, great. Public money, no, because there's nothing.
Yeah, the kind of research you guys are doing is not publicly funded, though. You guys are you're doing that kind of. Do you think that type of stuff people should be still investigating it, though? You're just saying don't use the school funds for it.
Don't use the school funds. I mean, Ben hit it. I mean, it's use evidence-based stuff. That's what we need, not research into paranormal ideas, because that's pretty much what they are. They're ideas that don't have anything to show for it. There really isn't. And we touched on it, because how long have psychics been investigated? How long have all these abilities, ESP, precognition, remote viewing, all of this stuff, how long has this been studied? And where are the results? Where are the breakthrough results? There are none.
Yeah, we are using science to respond to these claims. There are people out there, the the medium industry, the psychic industry, there's a wide variety of stuff that are paranormal or extraordinary claims that we look into that people are raking money in, and we would argue fraudulently raking money in based on unscientific claims. So we are responding to those claims and using real science to address what they are saying.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, if there was a breakthrough and, somebody won Jim's big prize, I would say, hey, there's something to look into here.
Okay.
I would certainly.
I would be the person to look into.
Yes.
I want to cut to that too. Well, look, since you mentioned cryptids, I'll just mention this because a lot of people don't realize. But for example, the search for Bigfoot and Yeti has actually been very well funded. There was a millionaire named Tom Slick in the 1950s who poured a bunch of money into it. This is not nickel and dime. So so the idea that we don't have results because we haven't poured enough money into it is garbage. There has been untold time and effort and people years and just resources and look at ghost hunting, for example, right? We have ghost hunting groups across the country and around the world that are inspired in some cases by these TV shows. So you would have, I would say, probably thousands, maybe tens of thousands around the world of people who think they're doing good research. They're going out, they're doing all this, they're doing that. And the question is, wow, how's that going, guys? Because you have all these groups that all claim to be finding EVPs, they're finding this, they're finding that. And the question is, well, what the hell is this, right? You have all these groups that are going to these haunted houses, these haunted locations, Myrtle's Plantation, the Whaley House in San Diego, all these, the Queen Mary, all these allegedly haunted places. And yet,
that would be so
and yet they're all doing this, and there's no building of evidence. There's no.
I think most of what comes from there is anecdotal, not on. Yeah, I think most of the people, they get creeped out and they feel weird. And like, well, yeah, you probably would feel weird walking around a big sanitarium at night. Yeah. Okay. Well, okay, that's fair. Let's see. What else can I get into here? Do you think? Have any of you come across something that you couldn't personally explain that was intriguing? It doesn't mean it's not explainable, but you couldn't personally explain it and it was intriguing to you and you were like, I wonder what that is. Or is there a particular, like a favorite story or a favorite investigation?
Well, people always ask us, like, so our test for the $250,000 is a 2-part test.
Okay.
So you have to pass the first part and then pass the second part. So they always ask me, has anyone come close? And the short answer is no one's even passed the first part of the test. But the closest person to ever passing the test was one of us during a rehearsal of the protocol.
Oh no.
We were doing the Zener cards, the 5 different
Yeah, Zener cards, great.
And we were just making sure everybody had his or her role worked out properly. And one of our guys got 4 out of the first 5 right, which is like, it got 4 in a row right. Which is like,
yeah.
125 to 1 or something. We're like, are you serious? You're cheating? You're cheating your own people? And he said, no, I'm just lucky. And of course he missed the next 10 in a row. It all evens out eventually. But yeah, John Suarez was on a real hot streak one day.
Well, that sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
For me, I mean, I don't know. I can answer the first part. There's been plenty of times I couldn't explain something. And that's just simply because I didn't have enough information.
Mm-hmm.
Either you're getting the story like second, third, fourth hand, or if that. It's something happened a few seconds ago and the conditions changed since then. It's just a lack of information. So there's been plenty of times I can't explain it. And it's always fun because I'm the token skeptic. It's like, why can't you explain this? See, there's paranormal. It exists. Well, no. But even so, I mean, personally for me, I always find it intriguing. I mean, this is why I've been doing this for so long. After time and again, I usually do find an explanation, but there's just as many times I don't. And that still intrigues me because I'm like, wow, that is a mystery. That's still a mystery. So as for anything in particular, I can't really recall anything right now. I mean, as soon as we're done, I'm going to have like 1,000 pop into my head. But right now, I mean, just pretty much anything, like the big things. I mean, it's just intriguing to me across the board. If I can't figure it out, my self-diagnosed non-medical OCD kicks in and I want to figure it out. I really do. And there's been plenty of times when I've left a location and I've come back weeks or months later and said, you know what? This is why I'm here. I'm going to try and figure that out.
Also, like an investigate, like a haunting or something.
Yeah, something like that, or any kind of sighting or weird experience. Yeah, like I write it down. I mean, I had tons of notebooks, and I write it down, and I'll go back into my notes and say, all right, this is what happened. Let's see if I can, replicate it. Let's see if I can figure this out. So.
And I would say that my answer is sort of a combination of both Jim and Kenny's, where, I've been researching all sorts of weird things, ranging from ghosts to Bigfoot to crop circles to psychics to you name it, for going on 2 decades now.
Yeah.
And like Kenny, I'm intrigued by them. I'm fascinated by them because it's cool. It's interesting. The same thing with Jim. We love this. We genuinely do. We get excited about this. We're fascinated by the ideas and, could this be real? And if it's not real, then why are people thinking it's real? And if it is real, how does it work? We're not debunkers. We're not dismissers. We don't sit back and say, this can't possibly be true. We're all genuinely curious and intellectually curious and engaged in this. So you're not going to find us, being rude and nasty and making these broad sweeping statements that this is impossible. None of us have said that because science doesn't work that way. And so, if I was absolutely certain that these things didn't exist, if I was closed-minded, I said, there's no way the ghosts can be real. There's that psychic power is just so beyond my ability to comprehend it, it can't be true. I wouldn't waste my time. I have spent years of my life and written a dozen books and articles. I've spent so much of my personal time and money and everything else because I'm intrigued by these things. I love mysteries. We all love mysteries. Kenny's got a mystery machine behind him. Jim does this all the time. We're the three of us and others. This is our groove, man. We love these sorts of things. But we love these things, but the line that we draw is you have to give us good evidence. We're not going to accept somebody saw something. We're not going to say, well, my cousin said this happened or whatever else. We have to have something to go on.
Mm-hmm.
Cool story, bro. That's it. When they give us the cousin story, it's like, cool story. Show me the evidence.
Those can be the most fun, but it's, I wasn't there. So I try to never disavow someone of their experience. I remember I had an ex-boyfriend who had some crazy haunting experiences and they truly frightened him. And I just remember saying, well, I don't know what that was, but I believe that you had the experience you had. I'm not going to say you didn't. It clearly moved you or it made you scared or whatever. And I think it's fascinating. And, but yeah, I can't say it's necessarily whatever it is, some sort of paranormal thing because I wasn't there. I can't see what you saw.
And just to clarify, I mean, it's not like I'm, somebody tells me a story and then all of a sudden I'm in their face like, cool story, whatever, it's fake. No, I mean, it as you said, people had an experience. Something happened to them. What it was, we really don't know yet. And neither do they. I mean, because they were scared, they were fearful. Something shook them. So they did have an experience, and all of us will sit and listen to them. We will sit there and listen to tell your story. I'm going to listen to you, and if you want to explore it, then I'll explore it with you. Yeah. But I might say things that you might not like. So be ready for it. I'm just very blunt. I'm not gonna lie to you. Yeah. If you don't want to hear it, that's cool. And especially this happens often with I believe they would be like crisis apparitions or something where people have an experience of a recently departed person, and if they have this little vision or sighting and stuff and it makes them feel good, I'm not there to, kill their dream here, or shoot down their cloud. I'll listen to the story and say, oh, that's cool. That's really cool. It's nice that you feel better. You know, does it make you feel good? Good. All right. I'm not going to ruin it. But if you're going to use that and tell the world, you know, start preaching, this is real and this and that, you know, and questions come up, yes, I'm going to give my opinion.
Yeah.
But otherwise, no, I'm not going to ruin it, something like that for them, because usually it's just something personal.
And that's a technique that I've seen all three of us use when we're dealing with believers, because again, we're coming at this from an admittedly skeptical perspective. We tell you where we're coming from, right? This is what we believe. We're open-minded, but we'll listen to you. We'll be diplomatic. And a lot of times in the process of interviewing somebody, an eyewitness or somebody that believes they have some ability, again, we'll just ask them simple, non-threatening, straightforward questions. Like, I'm not attacking you. This isn't a criticism of you. Help me understand what your power is. Help me understand what you experienced. And I'll give you one quick example. I was investigating a place called Fort George in Ontario, about an hour north of Buffalo. And I was there with a TV crew, and there was a woman there. And I was, as mentioned, I was the token skeptic. So this is the role we all play. And a woman came up to me, and she had a parabolic recorder, so she was recording things all the time. And she listened. She had all these audio recordings, EVPs, ghost voices, and she said, you know, you've clearly done some research on this. You're more science-based. You know, will you listen to my evidence? I said, okay. And she says, okay, I recorded a ghost child. Ooh. Will you listen to it? And I said, I will listen to your audio of a ghost child. I will not laugh. I mean, I'll take you seriously. But first, tell me, how do you know what a ghost child sounds like? Yeah. And I was not being facetious. I said, again, I'm not, this is not a gotcha moment. I don't know what a ghost sounds like. I know what a human child sounds like. Right. I don't know what a ghost child sounds like. And frankly, I don't know how either one of us could know that it was a ghost child. And I said, I will listen to what you're saying. But anyway, my point is that in asking the question, I diplomatically raised the question, or oh, how do I know, you know, why am I assuming it's X instead of Y? And right. Oftentimes that sort of leads people that way.
I guess because she didn't see a child, but she heard a child. So it just, that's
right. And right. And of course, but that's exactly right. So I would say, okay, so there may be other explanations. It could be in that there was a child that you just didn't happen to see because it's open to the public. It's an old fort. Well, there are children on the grounds. So yeah. I mean, just because you recorded a human child's voice, I'm not saying it wasn't a ghost child. I'm just asking how you could know.
It's hard to ascertain that under the circumstances. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
good point. Yeah, how would you know?
And that's an example of, I think, all of our approach is that we exhaust the prosaic, evidence-based explanations that are already consistent with known science and known psychology. Yeah. If that already explains it, there's really no reason to dip into the unproven, magical, paranormal, supernatural world.
Mm. Yeah, that makes sense. I remember when I was a kid, I had an experience with, I didn't realize what it was, but I had an experience with sleep paralysis. And that was terrifying. And I remember thinking about that experience for many years. And when I finally read about sleep paralysis, I was so relieved because I'd had that whole thing with the pressure and you can't talk. And I saw like what I interpreted was a big shadowy demon thing and all this stuff. And I used to tell that story before I figured out what it was. And people were like, oh, you know, and then afterwards I was still excited to tell them because I thought having an explanation, it really put my mind at ease. And I think a lot of other people who get night terrors and things like that would be helped knowing some of this stuff. I'm like, no, that's a common thing. And just depending on the century you lived in, it was either a witch or a demon or an angel or an alien.
Incubus.
So, yeah. So I'm like, I don't think it has to take the magic or the mystery out of stuff just because you have an explanation for it. It's still a really amazing experience. Our brains are incredible. Yeah.
Some of the real explanations are really cool.
They're really cool.
The whole Roswell, I mean, read what really happened at Roswell. A lot of people don't even know that the U.S. had this program when they were trying to listen for atomic bomb explosions or test explosions. This is
that's what they wanted to think. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the problem too. No matter how strong the evidence is, the conspiracy theorists will always
Yeah.
think otherwise.
Well, I love Aliens was one of my last stops, right? When I was reading about stuff, because I was like, well, this is something that, you have people who they seem like very rational, grounded people, members of the military or pilots who have had all these years, and they'll say, I saw this thing. And that was so intriguing for me. And that's one of the reasons I almost wish I got into cryptids, but there's not enough time in one semester to cover all this stuff. But if I could do some of these other types of events, I think that would be really fun. But all UFO means, and it's so simple, it's just unidentified. It doesn't mean unidentifiable. It just means currently unidentified. But yeah, I love some of the stories of people that were like, we saw this crazy thing. I have no idea what it was. And I'm like, all right, that's cool. Oh, and if any of you get the chance, have you seen the SNL skits with the people in the parapsych labs who have different experiences? I'll send you the link because I'm almost afraid now that I've said this and my class will hear this. Hi, class. We have the link for you all too, but it's a little rude, but it is so funny. Because they cover all of these experiences. Yeah,
I'm used to rude, so I'm good.
Yeah, that's okay. So do you think that there will be more precise tools that will put this stuff to rest a little bit better, or do you think people are just always going to kind of want to see what they want to see, or where do you think it's going in the future? Because of course we have even better machines than we had 20 years ago for measuring stuff on the tiny level. So
yeah, I don't think it's a matter of the tools. I mean, like the three of us and people that we know who have been doing this for a long time, Joe Nickel, James Randi, Richard Wiseman, once you have gone to the depths of discovering why people have these experiences, some of it's psychological, some of it's photographic, so there's like a whole range of explanations. Then it's not a matter of instrumentation, it's a matter of understanding why the various reasons are that people have these experiences. Once you do that,
so you think it's better it looked at from the psychological perspective and the cultural perspective and all of that sort of thing?
Depending on the claim, yes. I mean, there's like really good solid explanations for, I would say 99% of the stuff. Like Kenny said, sometimes you just don't get enough information, and we'll never have enough information if it happened 30 years ago or whatever. But for the stuff that we study and look at and mostly understand, it's not really that much of a mystery. Each individual one fits these categories. And if the whole world had a better understanding of why they experience these things, or even simple statistics, like really weird, funky coincidences have to happen all the time.
Yes.
But most people don't realize that. Most people think, that it's crazy and it's somehow significant.
The Kennedy and Lincoln one comes to mind, all of that stuff.
Exactly. So, to us, the real tools are giving people the ways to understand what's happening to them.
Oh yeah, so you all are science educators as well, right? That's a good lead into. So how are you reaching out to people, and what's your demographic that you're targeting? I know you work for Skeptical Inquiry and CFI and PsyCop and all those organizations. Do you go around and give lectures on this stuff? I mean, not now during the time of plague, but normally, I know you give talks, you've been on TV. How do you think is the best way to get people to use critical thinking skills out in the real world? And especially for the younger generations, what would you tell my class would be a good resource for them? What do you think?
All of the above. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, for me, I do a podcast every Friday night where I try to push some critical thinking out into more of discussions. It's not like a give me your claim and I'm going to debunk it kind of thing. It's like put a question out there and let's talk about it in a civil manner. And that's one of the rules, like no fighting, like we're going to have a civil conversation. If not, I'm going to boot you. So I win anyway. But that's just part of it. For me, I do lectures. I go to different skeptic groups, like Skeptics in the Pub, or just skeptical organizations that are in this area. I go to paranormal conferences. I go there. I try to get myself on the speaker list so that I'm at least the token skeptic, and I can either do a Q&A or have a topic. And usually I do like something on photography or solving mysteries. Photography is a background skill for me. So I can give you really detailed, not only really detailed explanations, but I can duplicate, I can show you examples.
People don't realize that you could fake photographs even way back in adjust that
Yes.
your photographs could be, yeah.
I mean, it's so easy,
Yeah.
not only to fake photographs, but to adjust photographs, to touch them up, even without Photoshop. And I mean, when you say that to the younger generation, now I feel old, but you see their eyes like, what are you talking about? How can you edit a photo without Photoshop?
People paint on them.
You start, oh my gosh, you start talking about ink and graphite pencil and trimming knives that they used to use to make people thinner and cut out anomalies in old photographs. It's mind-blowing the amount of work that people put into it.
But yeah, good.
I also do, I have a YouTube channel where I try to put out videos every now and then on certain subjects. Like I take a piece of equipment, take it apart. I demonstrate exactly what's inside, what it's supposed to do, what it was built for. Or because many of them are geared and marketed towards ghost hunting specifically, I take them apart and show them the individual parts and say, this is what these parts actually do. Not what they claim, catching ghosts or something like that. This is what they actually do. And I'll show you tests. I'll take video of the different tests that I do to set up, to show them how to set up. And then, I mean, that's right now, that's the extent. I do collect haunted stuff. Haunted stuff. Cursed stuff that people give me, and I get the backstory and say, okay, great.
Never in a different place in the morning?
No, I wish. Kidding me? I wish. But I have a ton of stuff
around on the person I live with just to mess with them.
I have a ton of stuff, like boxes of stuff on the other side of the monitors that people have given me over the years.
Is that a real Ouija board behind your head?
That's a tray.
Oh,
that's an antique tray. It's actually very delicate.
Antique.
Yeah.
So pre-Parker Brothers or?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So it's really, I have a whole bunch of Ouija boards, different boards, not just Ouija, because that's a brand name.
Right, I know. Well, Parker Brothers has found the portal to the other region.
Yeah.
We should give them credit for that.
So I had different brand names, and then also like adult versions that are completely different, look completely different. Now, I mean, I don't mean adult versions as in like naughty. I mean adult versions that.
Although I'm sure some people have those discussions with their ghost friends.
I'm sure. I do have a drinking board Ouija board though.
Oh,
so, because of course it's me. But and I mean, hell, here you go. I have a Dybbuk box, which is a famous haunted object, but mine actually has spirits called rum and vodka.
Nice.
So
I think Doers has an ad that says we don't believe in ghosts, but we sell spirits or whatever.
Yes.
Great, it's really.
And
cool.
I do stuff like this. I just recently spoke with a teacher for, I think, kids that were like 11 to 13 years old. And she does a lesson plan on critical thinking, and we actually talked for an hour. And she told me she sent me her lesson plans, and we went through them, and I offered ideas on you can test this or you can suggest this, and this is a cool experiment to do with the kids. So, but that's just me. So you guys have done a lot more.
Oh, you're doing a lot though.
I would say in terms of my stuff, like the other guys, in the before times, all of us have gone around and given lectures and talks and whatever else. For many years, maybe 6 or 8 years, I was writer for Discovery News and LifeScience.com. And a lot of my columns for Discovery News and Life Science were skeptical, but they were science-based. And there's a lot of blending between science and skepticism. So it wasn't called Ben's Skeptical Take. It was like, here's science, and here's a little skeptical twist. And so that's one thing I tried to do was sort of, do some skepticism. I mentioned before, I have a podcast called Squaring the Strange. It comes out every couple weeks. Awesome. And I've written, again, a handful of books, and also Skeptical Inquirer Science Magazine, which is where all 3 of us publish. And one of the benefits of Skeptical Inquirer, not only is it probably, I think it's the oldest and most established publication, continually published skeptics magazine, but it also allows us to change with the times, right? And so we're not just locked in on some mystery from 1965. We're dealing with COVID misinformation and urban legends and conspiracy theories. And
oh my gosh, yeah.
yeah, there's so there, and that's an important thing to recognize.
Practical applications of critical thinking extend.
Yeah, the skepticism that we're talking about, it's applied across the board. It's applied to COVID claims. It's applied to something we see on TV, some new Netflix documentary.
Did you
so there's always a skeptical prism to
see the resurgence of the flat earthers?
Yeah, well,
that's Jim.
We were out with National Geographic Explorer out at the Salton Sea, 160
Good, you didn't
miles
fall
from-
off the edge.
Well, that's not where the edge is,
Oh, sorry.
but according to them,
it's further out. You got to go further out till you find the edge.
gotta go
Just
way
keep going.
south. Yeah, way south.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, this is a perfect example of modern times. You know, something that was 20 years ago was a wink and a nod joke among the world is gaining steam, and people are producing slick YouTube videos. And frankly, they're doing a lot of damage because they're spreading bogus science and bogus scientific pseudo methods.
Yeah.
And, you know, they're making it sound like you can't be certain of anything, that there's no objective reality, all the things that, you know, science has fought against.
Yeah, I agree. It does some real damage when it impacts how people are or are not going to vaccinate their kids. That's one of my first things I talk about is I said, I know this is about parasite stuff, but I said, first of all, vaccinate, get your kids vaccinated. Because I said, there's some stuff that I show them Retraction Watch website. I say, this has been debunked 1,000 million times. They've spent millions of dollars on it. And it's just, you know, it doesn't mean that there's never been a mistake in the world of medicine, but, you know, it's like, please. It drives me bonkers, some of this stuff. So, and you know,
Welcome to our world.
yeah, no, I can only imagine
Every day.
because as much fun as it is to discuss all the kind of crazy out there things and, you know, astral projection and past lives and stuff like that is really fun to talk about. Yeah. The anti-science rhetoric that's going on right now is just, it's so disheartening to me. I feel like we're really falling back amongst the world's leaders in science education because we're like, okay, so 30 or 40 years ago, we were, you know, figuring out how we could eventually go to Mars one day, or we could, you know, finally map out all of the human genome and stuff like this. And now scientists are like, okay, so the Earth is round. You know, things that we had settled 3,000 years ago, they knew that the Earth was round. And it just got, you know, the science got better and better at that as we went along, and all of these other really cool things when you talk about cosmology that people are figuring out and the warping of space-time and all this cool stuff. And yet you still have to go back and tell people, you're speaking on a device that has satellites up and beaming down from space because of things like physics and the curvature of the Earth and all, you know. So I don't understand how, you know,
the flat earthers all use GPS to get to the Salton Sea location.
And somebody said if it was flat, the cats would have pushed everything off by now. So
it's a shame. It really is a shame because it wastes a lot of time and resources. You know, like, I mean, Jim spent, what did you do? You went out all day and spent the day with them going through it. And
I cut you off. I'm sorry.
It took a ton of preparation. Fortunately, a rich person underwrote our side of it. So, because I mean, we had weather balloons that we sent up, and you know, we made these targets and had a boat and all this stuff. You know, the problem is, and one of the flat earthers on the way out there said, "I just don't believe anything that science tells us." And I said, "Well, you're sitting in a car that's going 75 miles an hour, so you believe something."
Thank you.
But the problem is,
I'm like, you're wearing clothes, you're living in lit.
I bet you believe those brakes are going to work.
Yeah, no kidding.
You know what I mean? It's so like, yeah.
But think about, I mean, humanity can't replicate 500 years of known science. Every generation who thinks it's not true is satisfied. And the only way we're going to make any progress in this species is by building on the efforts of some of our predecessors.
Yeah.
And if you don't believe anything, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
Well put.
Yeah. We have to, so what you're saying is we have to go back in time and find Newton and clone him and bring him forward in time.
I wouldn't go back that far, maybe, but
Oh yeah, he was also a practicing alchemist, right? But that's what I
right.
find so interesting with these people.
Maybe Stephen Hawking will try to get a piece of
Yeah, I'd be happy with Douglas Adams, frankly. I think he could do a lot of good in the world right now because he was a good science communicator. So I didn't get to hear what else you guys are doing. You do all mention though that you between the magazines and the talks and the lectures and all that. That's a lot of outreach. Did anyone want to add anything else that they're working on that they think my students should know about? Or
I mean, I'm a host of the Center for Inquiry. We have two hosts. Leanne Lord is the other host of the Center for Inquiry Point of Inquiry
podcast, right? Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
So there's that, and yeah, I mean, all of us try to do as much TV and media as possible, and we'll talk to anybody who has a legitimate interest. So, we're out there as much as we can.
Right. I spent a lot of time hanging out in the paranormal community. And I don't know why I do air quotes. That's what they're called. So I do mingle. I go to a lot of their events and hang out. And I'm constantly talking to people that organize their conferences or their events and say, hey, if you want me to do something, if you want to have a different point of view, I'd be happy to, just let me know. And I continually do that at the end of my podcasts or any other shows when I do like a guest on somebody else's podcast. I'm always say, hey, I'm available. If I can make it, I'll make it. And then we can talk. I love doing that stuff. I love talking about this stuff because it gets me excited. It gets me really pumped up.
Yeah, it's so fun.
It is, especially when you get the questions. The questions are great.
Well, I've spoken at 4 Mensa conferences, and they're a pain in the ass. I hate to say
really?
it. Yeah.
Well, there's
a lot of believers in the Mensas. It was kind of shocking.
Yeah. Well, that's what I know some research has shown that that's why I was saying I don't want to say everyone who believes in anything is necessarily not a smart person. You have a lot of very highly educated people, a lot of members in the scientific communities who have some beliefs that are just out there, but I just consider it a form of compartmentalization and some cognitive dissonance and some whatever. And actually I had written this down earlier because I think it's Barry, you have Kenny, I think, has the Houdini quote, and I noticed your Arthur Conan Doyle reference, your Sherlocking the Paranormal.
Sherlock, yeah.
Yeah, and I've written about them a bunch because I love their relationship, Arthur Conan Doyle and Harry Houdini's relationship, and how it was kind of destroyed by the belief systems that they had and how they each dealt with it. But I found some video on Arthur Conan Doyle explaining his beliefs, and he seems so sincere and so sweet. I can't help but love him. But it's fascinating that he also was the person that wrote Sherlock Holmes, who was such an empiricist. So I love that. I think that stuff existing in people simultaneously is just befuddling and fascinating and tells us a lot about the human condition that we really want to connect with stuff.
Their relationship until the end when it really got bad. It was a good relationship, and that's what I try to keep with the people that I interact with. Because most of the time, I interact with some skeptics, but I interact more with paranormal or believers. I interact with them more because I'm out there at their events, and we keep a good relationship where we can talk, not argue, not yell at each other, or not just hate each other. And that's what I liked about the majority of Houdini and Doyle's relationship, because they did talk.
They really had a respect for each other as
Yes.
intelligent people looking for what's true and having,
You know, until, you know, the fateful day when it all fell apart. You know, it started falling apart. But
yeah.
I mean, I think that's what we all promote, because I know, I mean, Jim going out with all the flat earthers, you know, and
I don't know if I could do that. I think my eyes roll too far back in my head to look at anybody, but I think that that's really cool.
Well,
You did that.
part of it was, it's like that particular issue. And I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that the Earth is a sphere, but it's not something you get to observe every day.
Right.
And so to design something that would show all of us this in front of our faces was kind of fun.
That's a good point. Yeah. And it probably isn't as emotional a topic as some of these other things. So you weren't trying to like take away anyone's experience of their dead relative visiting them or something. You're just trying to prove something that's very, you know.
they can be
But
you get very emotional about the Earth.
oh yeah, well I'm not, because it doesn't bother me a bit.
Yeah, I don't see how that would. Right.
I don't have a stake in the shape. It is what it is. But the problem, it did make them very emotional, because it's shaking their world. I mean, their lives are interwoven with the idea that they have discovered this unbelievable truth about the shape of the world, and all the scientific communities in the world are hiding this great secret. So to threaten that is hurts them.
Wow. So it really changed their. So they learned, and did they admit that they?
No, it didn't. They didn't buy it for a second. No, they saw the curvature right in front of their face in two different ways, and they did not admit that it just happened. I know. Well, that was my reaction. I mean, oh my
Your
God.
weather balloon.
Again, welcome to our world. This is what we deal with all the time.
Oh no. Oh man. Yeah. Okay. So Ben, you have other stories like that, or do you have anything to add to that with people?
Well, no, I mean, again, like the guys are saying, it really depends on what the context is, right? And so if you're talking about psychic abilities or ghosts or something where people have more of a personal vested interest, like you said, you know, they genuinely believe that their grandmother is looking out for them, and there's a sense in the house, or whatever else. But no, I mean, it's just sort of what Jim and Kenny were saying is that you know, it's important to be diplomatic and respectful, and just say, look, you know, let's all work this out together, right? And we may not agree on the same premises. I mean, if you believe that nothing in science is true, which is self-evidently wrong, but if you're going to adopt that position, then I mean, we don't have, there's no common ground there.
Right.
But otherwise, you know, I've often found where, again, if you just treat people respectfully and you say, look, I mean, if you had some experience, again, I have a background in psychology, and I use it a lot of time, because someone come to me and say they had something weird happen to them, and my answer is usually, I don't doubt that. I mean, I wasn't there. I don't know what it was. And we've all experienced hoaxers and pranksters and frauds. But for the most part, and this is true for the three of us and in general, people are sincere. They genuinely believe they saw a ghost. They genuinely think that the earth is flat. They genuinely believe these things. Mm-hmm. And so it's up to us to sort of, you know, try and nudge them towards, you know, an evidence-based empirical assessment. But again, at the end of the day, you know, we can only do so much, right? And you know, Jim is gonna sleep just fine in his bed tonight, despite the fact that somebody online thinks that the Earth is flat. Right. And I'm gonna sleep just fine tonight, despite the fact that there's people that think the Chupacabra is real and it's attacking Bigfoot and everything else. So, you know, all we can do is make a sincere effort to explore these mysteries, explore them with science, a good methodology, and show people our work. And this is why we write these things up. We do talks, we do a podcast, we write up articles and books, so that we can say, it's not just us. Here, look for yourself. And that way people in future generations can say, well, you know, there's this weird thing, but I think Ben Radford wrote about that, or Jim Underdown, or Kenny, or Massimo Polidoro, or Randy did something on this, and they can go back and say, see, this is the same thing, that it's old wine in new bottles.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's good. But people have to be in the right frame of mind to take the information in, and
Yes.
it's true. Like, I don't think I could have been convinced otherwise until I was being honest with myself and asking questions like, well, did I really experience what I think I did, or do I just want to believe that? Do I just like it, or what's. And so until I really wanted to, I went and sought out the information. But if somebody just said to my face, well, that wasn't what you experienced, I just said, you don't know that.
Right.
So yeah, that's fair. You're putting it out there so people can.
Usually that's my approach when I go to events. Like, aside from the conferences, there's things called like public ghost hunts, where you pay
So that must be
to play.
fun.
You go and there's a bunch of teams or people that are actively ghost hunting, and I usually show up. I pay to just watch them. That's why I pay. I observe what they're doing, and I don't interact. I really don't. I just sit there and watch them, and I take notes of what they're using, how they're using it, what they're doing, what their interpretations are, this and that. And often I know the group that's running it. And I mean, half the time, as soon as I sign up, I get an email like, what are you doing? Why are you coming to my event? But even when I go, I don't point out like, oh, you're doing it wrong. You're not doing that right. Or that's not correct. I let, if somebody, because usually the team might say something like, oh, we have a token skeptic here or something. They don't actually call me a token skeptic. They say, oh, we have a skeptic here if you're interested. And that's the nice thing. Some of these groups actually introduce me and say, if you have any questions about the equipment, he's the person to talk to.
Well, there you go.
So I wait, like I said, in the corner. And if they come to me, then we can have a discussion. I don't go around and just start pointing fingers, because that's not the way to do it.
The girl in the other room. That's all it is.
Right. Actually, I just sit on my phone and be like, oh my God, there is a person here doing this.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and then that's the way I think it's a good approach, because I'm not forcing anything on them. They're coming to me, and that opens up the communication better that way.
That seems like a reasonable thing to do. Okay, so it's been a little over an hour. I don't want to keep you all much longer. For you, no. Well, I guess nobody's trick or treating, so that's.
Well,
I don't know.
We used to have a thing called the. We've done it like 3 or 4 times at the CFI in Los Angeles. We had a superstition bash, where you could walk in and run the gauntlet of the 13 stations of superstition. They could break a mirror, walk under a ladder, open up a door, all kinds of stuff.
And throw salt on your
made it out alive, you got a little Snickers bar.
Did anyone not make it out alive?
Well, we don't like to talk about that.
You know what? Really? Let's just move on.
Oh, that's fun. I like that.
Yeah. Aside from that, I also do cosplay once in a while, and I actually built.
I never would have pegged you for that kind of person.
You should look at this.
I see this. Is amazing.
Wow.
The funnest place ever. Oh my gosh.
Yes, it is. That's only a quarter of it.
Your little villain back there, and Ghostbusters stuff.
Yeah.
Is that an evil clown behind you?
What?
Yeah.
No, behind her.
Evil clowns.
Oh.
I wrote a book on evil clowns. There's one on your fridge. Don't look behind you.
So what was about the evil clowns? I'm so interested in that.
It's literally right behind you. Look, I'm not joking.
Okay.
Turn around. Look, it's on your fridge.
Oh yeah, there is. I know.
I know. That's what I'm telling you.
I put it there. This is what I'm doing for Halloween. I'm having people. I never have people over because my apartment is about all that you see. It's this big. So I'm just having 5 friends over, and we're gonna do one of those murder mystery things. I got
That's cool.
Hunt a killer box, and I'm like, oh boy, what are we gonna do? And so I got from the party place, I got these horrifying, they look like clown things, and yeah,
there you go.
Creepy circus things, and I'm so happy. And I'm gonna dress up as a magician's assistant that got sawed in half.
Oh, that's clever.
Nice.
I like that.
Nice.
Yeah, I thought that would be hilarious and kind of gross, but comfortable to wear all night. So yeah, I put the evil clown on my fridge. I was thinking about that too, and I'm like, oh, you wrote about evil clowns. So what is that? You're just talking about how people are scared of clowns? I know that's a real phobia. right?
No, it was actually it's only slightly off topic, but not really. No, it was actually on looking at scary and evil clowns throughout history from
Oh,
a folkloric cultural perspective, looking at evil clowns, in pop culture,
yeah.
Krusty the Clowns, Pennywise, and looking at all the different versions and variations. And
Oh,
so,
did you see the one from the American Horror Story?
yes, Twisty the Clown, yeah.
Ooh. I was like, oh, that's the most horrifying thing I had ever seen. I think,
Yes.
yeah.
So it just and I found lots of skeptical angles to it. So
Yeah,
there's,
yeah.
and I love, and part of what I do is I bring, the investigation and journalism and critical thinking and skepticism, but also folklore. I do a lot on urban legends, folklore,
Great.
legend tripping stuff, and so it was just sort of natural to do one on evil clowns. That's why I did.
Is it because of the uncanny valley? Because I think I was afraid of them when I was really small, that they just look a little too
Well,
extreme.
clowns tend to be very garish and primary colors and stuff. They're sort of they're bigger than life, and that creeps a lot of people out. I'm personally not afraid of clowns. I think they're fine.
I'm not now, but
Well, you will be tonight.
I will be. Thanks a lot.
Cool.
Thank you. And
You're welcome.
have a good Halloween. I hope you don't get too inundated.
Yeah, we'll be all
We'll
right.
survive. We have so far.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, just survive. That's the thing, right? Just survive. Okay. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Have a great
All right.
night.
Thanks.
Bye.
Good night.
Thank you. Bye.